Well, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. As mentioned before, my name is Mark Blitz. I am the project director for the tool that was used, one of the main tools that was used in the project that Mary Jo and Betsy have been talking about. It's called the Comprehensive Assessment of Leadership for Learning, or CALL. And just to give you a very quick background on it, it started as a federally funded research project at the University of Wisconsin, and I started on that as a fledgling doctoral student, and now I am a fledgling project director for it. And we've been doing some really good work, I think, and getting some interesting data for research and also for school improvement work among all our principals and district leaders. And I want to tell you a little bit about it and how it works. I want to start with this idea of assessment, which we hear a lot about. And no matter what we're talking about with regards to assessment, whether it's assessing students or teachers or principals, we're talking about schools here specifically, no matter what type of assessment we're talking about, we in some way are measuring performance. We're measuring learning, we're measuring teaching effectiveness, we're measuring leadership effectiveness. But we hope that these assessments are going to be used to support learning of everyone who's being assessed, of students, of teachers, of principals. That's not always the case. Oftentimes with assessments, it's benefiting those who are giving the assessment, but not necessarily those who are being assessed. So we want to make sure that everyone involved in the assessment, no matter what it is reaping the benefits of it. And we can do that by making sure that the data that comes out of it can be applied, and this is in the case of teachers and other practitioners in the school, such as principals, that the outcomes of the assessments can be applied to professional practice. That's one of our guiding principles in this work. Another is this, I would say, misconception that's been somewhat perpetuated by popular culture and mainstream media that the principal, as great as she or he is not necessarily a superhero. We've seen in movies and stories that principals, come into struggling schools and turn things around by her or himself. That's not really how things work. And if you wanted to measure or support or assess leadership in a school and you only focus on that one individual principal, you'd be missing a lot of what else is going on throughout the building. And that's the idea of distributed leadership, the idea that leaders are more than just the principal, that it consists of various people in the school who are interacting and taking on leadership responsibilities, and that the principal is doing a lot of that work, but also acts more like an orchestra conductor who is coordinating the work and making sure everything is happening effectively and efficiently and harmoniously, to extend the metaphor here. And this is really the foundation, this idea of distributed leadership. It's really the foundation behind the comprehensive assessment of leadership for learning, or CALL. And we'll be talking about CALL. You've heard a little bit about it already, and how it was used in this project. But just to give you an idea of what it is we're talking about. CALL is an online formative assessment and feedback system designed to measure school-wide distributed leadership. So I tried to squeeze in as much jargon as I could to describe it. Hopefully that was effective, but just to kind of give you kind of a more detailed description of what this is, we'll go through some of the key characteristics. So it begins with a multi-source survey. What does that mean? So it's a survey given out in a school where you have all the teachers, administrators, and instructional and student support staff responding to questions about leadership in the school. However, the survey is actually focused on leadership tasks. So regardless of who the individual person is in the school, we'd rather know what is actually being done and how effective is this work. So it's a focus on tasks, on practices, on activities, routines, rather than individual based. Once the survey has been administered in the school, then the school leaders have access to the feedback system, the formative feedback system, which you'll get a chance to look at today and see how this could be applied to your work with schools or in schools. And the system provides targeted data to support school improvement initiatives. Just to give you an idea, since I've been talking about how the survey focused on these practices, these tasks, these activities, the data that comes out of them, out of the system, is going to be then practice-oriented and action-oriented. And that's the idea behind the work we were doing to support school principals. So there's a lot of data that comes out of this system, and there's a lot of data that's being used in schools. We are in the era of data-driven leadership, of course. But from what I've seen, a lot of the data, most of the data that's being used for either school improvement planning or any other type of decision-making process is based on outcomes, right? We're looking at student achievement outcomes because that is actually what's most important. That's what we're doing, right? We're trying to enhance student learning. But that is on one end of the spectrum. On the other side, though, we have actually people in schools who are responsible for these outcomes. The teachers, the support staff, the leaders, and everyone, all the other adults in the school who are working to enhance student achievement and student learning. So I think then there's a gap. There's something that's between the people and the outcomes. And we don't necessarily always look at that. It would make sense to do that. So what we could do also is look at what people are actually doing. Again, tasks, activities, routines, and practices. And in this particular context, more specifically, we want to assess what people are doing and also assess what leaders specifically are doing. And we use the word leaders as a plural specifically, purposefully, because this is not an individual-based approach. It's looking at, again, these practices, these actions, and it could be accomplished in any which way. And we do that rather than focusing on the individual principle, which has been traditionally the way that leadership evaluation or leadership assessment has been conducted for quite some time. Rather than focusing just on the individual, we're focusing on the work of school leaders throughout the school. So, just to kind of still hammer home this point between the difference between an individual-based approach and an approach that takes on a distributed leadership framework, I want to show you a sample survey question, actually two. This is not taken from any specific survey, but it does, in a way, represent the approach to leadership evaluation or principal assessment that we've seen for some time. This question asks, how effective is the principal in implementing professional development activities? So the focus of this question is on the principal specifically. And the response options are what you would think would be a traditional rating scale, anything from not effective to extremely effective. Now, this question could give you some valuable information, but what if it's the case that it's not the principal who is implementing PD in the school? It could be an assistant principal, it could be a teacher leader, it could be a district leader. We don't know from school to school who is engaging in that work, and really, it's in our approach, it's not as important to determine who, but rather what and how. So we've taken the same construct, the same theme. This is how it's asked on the call survey. It says, which of the following best describes how well school-wide professional development activities reflect the instructional goals of the school? So the focus of this question is on the actual PD activities themselves. And the response options are potential examples of what's happening in the school. So now when people are taking the survey, they are giving input, they're providing feedback and data, but they're also, we hope, engaged in reflection and thinking about PD, thinking for this question, think about how it impacts them as teachers, how it affects their practice, how the work of leaders affects them as well. So when we get into the call system, you'll get a sense of other questions that are asked, but I wanted to give you kind of a sense of the difference between individual-based approach and distributed leadership-based approach. Okay, so we're going to go back to Betsy, who is going to talk about how she actually implemented this tool in her work.
Thank you. Okay, so, there we go. So, as I mentioned before, I was an administrator with some experience coming into a new building, and so in the fall of 2014, Mary Jo reached out to me because Merrill was a focus school identified by the DPI, and asked me to participate in this cohort. And I have to be honest, I was originally a little nervous because I was still getting to know the staff, and I was afraid this was actually going to be an assessment of my leadership. And so I thought, oh, how's that going to look? And after, obviously, conversations and getting to know the system, I was really excited about it. Like I said, I wanted to know where those leaders were in the building and how it was working because we had a very strong, committed staff. So we actually administered the call survey with all staff, including support staff, myself, and teachers. And then we were able to come together as a cohort, various administrators throughout the state who were identified as focus schools. We came together, as Mary Jo explained, and we actually got to analyze our results together and look for some common themes, some things that we could work on. And then we actually brought it back to Merrill and reviewed it with our instructional leadership team. And there's an old picture of the staff there. It was very exciting work, and they were committed to it because, of course, they had participated in the survey. And what we found that first year, the call system actually looks at 20 different areas. And so it identified these 4 strengths for us at Merrill: maintaining a school-wide focus on learning, professional learning, coaching and mentoring, and school resources that were focused on student learning. So that was definitely exciting to see. But then we also had some areas to focus on. And so based on the survey results, we found that personnel practices were something that needed to be looked at. Using teacher expertise and aligning those with student learning outcomes was something that wasn't always done. It was more based on seniority and those kinds of things. So that came out of the survey. We also wanted to look at buffering the teaching environment. And when we dug deeper into some of those questions, what teachers were feeling was they didn't have a lot of support in conflict resolution with our families. And so they wanted some support with that. They also wanted to connect more with the community. And then we also had formative evaluation of teaching and summative evaluation of student learning that showed up as areas of focus. So what was nice is that each of those areas actually had some strategies and suggestions for our staff for where to go next. And so that was really helpful as we looked at our results. We were able to focus on that as a whole staff, as an instructional leadership team. We also continued to work in our cohort, the Leadership for Learning cohort, with all of the administrators throughout the state, so that we could continue this important work. And when we couldn't meet face-to-face, we actually met online because we were from all over. And so it was really nice to continually connect as an administrator. Sometimes you feel isolated and you don't always have colleagues to collaborate with. So that was nice. We also used this work in our school improvement plans. I was able to use a lot of the call system work in our educator effectiveness project for myself personally, and then sharing it with our district as well as to how Merrill was doing. And then we were able to administer that call survey again the following fall to look for growth and continued areas of focus.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now then, given that you've had some background on the work and the project that we have been implementing, I'd like to put you in Betsy's shoes to see what kind of data she would be looking at. We're going to go to the website, which is leadershipforlearning.org. And then you'll see a button at the top right corner that says Login. And then when you get to there, you click on Survey Administrator. And then we've given you, say, an account to use for this exercise. And the email to enter is call plus Title I spelled out, not capital I, Title I at leadershipforlearning.org. And make sure that's all together. And then the password is Title I 2017.
So Mark has just a little bit of information to share with you about a new survey, a district-level survey that will also give you some information about the work in your district. I'm going to use this. Sorry.
Oh, sure. If you were in the dashboard before, when you were exploring the school's data and call, you might have been able to, some of you, as I said, kind of took it to the next level. If you are a district level leader or a state level agency person, and you have multiple schools in your dashboard, or if you, or like Betsy, have taken the call survey multiple times, you can see all of your data in the aggregate. So that's something that we didn't spend time with, but I just want to show you how this would be a useful tool for district level leaders who are supervising multiple schools, multiple principals, school improvement people, state level Title I people who are working with multiple schools. This is a function that's in the dashboard, so if when you're playing around later, you can take a look and see how to do that. The other thing, as Mary Jo was saying, is that we've also developed the call team, a assessment for district level leadership. So measuring, taking the same approach we have with our school level assessment with call, looking at practices, looking at tasks, looking at activities, but measuring that at central office district level, looking at how people are supporting their principals. And this is just some sample questions. You can look at them here. You can look at them in your handout as well, or in the PowerPoint slides. How district leaders hold school staff accountable for student learning, and how they provide feedback, formative feedback to principals for ongoing support. So this is a relatively new instrument, new survey that we developed, again, using that same approach with call, but it's aligned to the same domains and subdomains as our school level. So what could happen is that a district could administer the school level version of call and have data across the district like you saw in that aggregate view. But then you could look at it vertically and see what's happening at the district level that might be impacting those school level practices within those subdomains, within those areas. So I'm happy to chat with you more about that as well. We're excited to be rolling this out as well. So we all want to thank you for spending your morning with us, and we know that you have lots of options, so thanks for being at this particular session. Our contact information here, this is all in the program for it to be downloaded, downloaded so you can get that there. But of course, come chat with us after if you have more questions. And so Mary Jo, Betsy, me, we want to thank you, and have a great rest of the conference, everybody.